she has lived through some of the most horrible things that we could even imagine, the loss of family members and loved ones, and the tragedy of having to learn to just be a person and do things independently for themselves again, all out of the actions of someone who chose to drink and drive, someone who chose their wants and desires over the safety of others. And so Cindy, despite everything that she's been through, even the pain that she goes through still today, decades later, her perseverance is a story that we all can learn from.
You know, sometimes life throws you things that you don't expect, but it turns out to be such a joy. And that's how it was. We were so excited about starting a family and finishing school and doing all the things. And so when I found out I was expecting Michelle, that was my goal, was to be just like my mom. So we went home that day, and I fed Michelle and stretched out across the bed and was about asleep like she was. And you know how grandmothers can be. My nanny called and said, "I fixed all your favorites, so y'all come out and have supper." The aunts and uncles and cousins were there. It was kind of a Thanksgiving feeling. And everybody had pictures made with Michelle. When we got in the car at my grandmother's house, Mama, of course, insisted on holding the baby, so she got in the back and was holding Michelle. Mike was driving, and I was in the front seat with him. We were kind of laughing at who's going to get up at 2 a.m. and with the baby, and who gets the next dirty diaper, and just silly things like that. And I was talking kind of to Mama over my shoulder, and I looked forward, and there was a lady stopped waiting to turn left onto Greenbrier Road. And we were still talking, and all of a sudden I felt Mike just slam his brake. A car was coming behind Miss Snyder. She had her wheels turned. So when he hit her from the back, it threw her directly into our path, and bam, we hit head on, and the car immediately erupted into fire and flames. Because I saw what was going to happen, I kind of straightened my legs out, and it accordion pleated my legs. You don't do that with bones, but because I had straightened it, they broke several places, and my femur ended up jamming. My right foot was cut off, and I was thrown up under the dashboard. Mike hit the steering wheel. He had a lot of internal injuries. He had to have his spleen taken out and some other things. Mama hit the back of the bucket seats. It broke her arms and it crushed her face. And I don't know what happened to the baby. She never cried, and I never lost consciousness. So in my heart, I want to think she was already dead before she started burning. I cannot stand the thought of my child being alive and being on fire. I was thrown up under the dashboard, and because I didn't lose consciousness, I could feel the windshield melting. It has to get very hot for the windshield to melt. But I can remember ducking my head. I felt something hitting up here, and I thought it was blood, and I kept wiping it, but then the pain hit. It's kind of a delayed reaction for the pain, but the pain hit, and so I ducked my head and shielded my face up under the dashboard from the molten glass. And if I had been knocked out, my face would look like this hand does. And I probably wouldn't be out here talking to you today. My brother came up on the wreck, and he saw the wreck. He didn't realize it was us. The car was so engulfed in flames and fire, he couldn't identify us. But he had been an Eagle Scout and had a lot of first aid. He ran up and then realized it was us, and somehow had this burst of adrenaline and was able to get the car door open. And he came back and he got Mama out, or Mike out first, and then he got Mama out. And by then, I could remember thinking, I'm not supposed to be in hell. I'm a Christian, and that's not where I'm supposed to be. But I really thought, because everywhere I could see was fire, I would try to open my eyes. I was coughing, so we were all coughing. You couldn't see anything but because of the smoke. But I heard him holler at me, "Hang on, baby, I'm coming." And I just remember screaming, "Jimmy, I'm in hell. Get me out of here, I'm in hell." And he came back and he got me and he pulled me out. And I was laying on the side of the road. And I could tell that Mike and Jimmy were trying to get back in the car to find the baby, but there wasn't any way through. The fire had gotten so intense that they could find her.
I was a probation officer for Smith County Community Supervision and Corrections Department, so I supervised adult probationers in Smith County, and that is where I met Mrs. Grimes because she was a part of what's called our Victim Impact Panel class. Our Victim Impact Panel class is a class that if you've been put on probation for driving while intoxicated or other alcohol-related offenses, you've got to go through. It's court mandated, and at the time, Ms. Grimes and another lady was there to tell their stories about how their lives were impacted by somebody's choice to drink and drive. It's so important because we live in Smith County, and not even just our county, in Texas, our country altogether. There's so many people who are out on our streets who've been drinking and driving. If you look in our jail screens now and you look to see who got booked in over the weekend, so many of those are involved with driving while intoxicated. And I don't think people understand, we have this whole mentality of it can't happen to me. Yeah, that happens to other people, it will never happen to me. And so to see a person who just the decision that someone else made to get behind a wheel after drinking, to see how horrific and what a wreck it was. To see that and know it really does happen to people firsthand. You see the person, you see the injuries, you feel it in her voice as she's talking to you. I think it makes a difference.
The afternoon of April 25th, John had been over to a friend's house and they had been working on a pickup with some other friends. He had 5 beers. He was less than a mile home, and he thought he could make it that mile home. There was a man in the car with him, or in his pickup, and when we had the wreck, they both jumped out and ran away. They didn't try to help us get out. They didn't anything. He was sentenced to 3 years. He served less than 1 year and was a free man to go anywhere in the United States before I ever learned how to walk again.
People don't think when they've had too much to drink. They think they can control themselves. They always think that they haven't had that much to drink, and because they've done it before, or I've done it so many times, so they think it's just going to be another time I'm not going to get caught, or I'm not going to have an accident, or I'm not going to hit anybody. But it catches up to them when they make that horrible mistake of drinking and driving, or that decision. They ruin lives, and they don't realize it until it's too late. You can't take it back once you do that, once you kill somebody.
When you see DWI repeat offenders on the news, or just anywhere you are really, how does that make you feel?
It breaks my heart. It really does. There was one recently. There was a kid that I just love dearly. He's a football hero. That's all there is to it. My children went to school with his dad, and I had heard about him all of his life, and he was a great baseball player at Lindo High School. He even played football. Recently, he was arrested for, I know the third, I was told it was his 6th, that the first 3 of them had been dismissed. And this was right before the Super Bowl. He was arrested and charged with another DWI. And I didn't understand how he could keep doing this, and 4 or 5 days later, he was at the Super Bowl. His son was born and is probably the most world famous quarterback that ever has played for the NFL. Now, what could my daughter have been? Could my daughter have been the next president? Could my daughter have been a ballerina that was world renowned? There were so many things that she didn't get to do. And then when I saw him at the Super Bowl, there was alcohol everywhere. What did he learn? I was shocked. In fact, I sat there and cried watching the pictures when I saw of him standing there with his son at the Super Bowl, thinking, how dare he have the nerve to go up there? And I wasn't able to share that day with my daughter. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what political part, what race you are, nothing. Everybody should have the same accountability, whether you have money or you don't have money. That's why it's so important for me, for you young people, to step up to your friends, and it might make them upset. But wouldn't you rather have your friend upset with you because you wouldn't let them get behind the wheel of a car after they've been drinking and take their keys away from them than having to go to their funeral? But call your grandmother, call a neighbor, you know, pitch a fit. You don't want to die. Michelle didn't want to die, but there has to be accountability, and it goes back to the DA, it goes back to the judges, it goes back to the juries, the residents of Smith County that serve on these juries, and the plea bargains. I know there's problems with overcrowding in jails and things like that, but there's also overcrowding in cemeteries. It really upsets me. Just take the keys away if you have a friend that's drinking or on drugs or smoking pot or whatever, because how would you feel if you did this to somebody else? Or how would you feel if your friend was killed in a car wreck and you didn't take their keys away from them?